what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Thursday, June 14th, 2018. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is sitting in our control room, hand hovering over the phone, ready to answer the calls, put you on the air with your comments and questions. Obviously, the big news today, getting right on into it, is finally the release of the Inspector General's report into the investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. And as a lot of people expected, it does appear to be a bit of a limited hangout. The report details stuff that we all pretty much knew anyway, and confirms that we in the independent media did have it right all along, but it stopped short of going anywhere with it. And one of the things that you're going to see in the corporate media coverage is they're going to say that, yes, Comey was insubordinate and Comey was, broke from FBI procedures, but there was no political bias. We found absolutely no bias whatsoever. Okay, well, there's the big problem. Because what the Horowitz report is telling us is that Comey, along with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and all these other people, did all this stuff, went way off the rails of normal FBI procedure without a reason. Although the Horowitz report says there's clearly an anti-Trump animus going on there. But they're trying to make a point in saying Comey had no bias in doing what he did, which is complete and utter nonsense. He was totally protecting Hillary Clinton, or to be more accurate, totally protecting that email server. Now, the IG report does confirm that foreign actors were accessing Hillary Clinton's private email server and obtaining information, which again is something that we already knew all along here. Now, Trey Gowdy is already out with a statement on how he is alarmed, angered, and deeply disappointed by the Inspector General's finding of numerous failures by Department of Justice and FBI in investigating potential Espionage Act violations by former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Okay, I'm in agreement with that. The next question is, when does the investigation start up again? Because what the IG report has just said is the investigation into Hillary Clinton was totally botched. Is it not time for a new investigation? Of course, if you go over to social media like Twitter, Hillary's supporters are already out there trying to load this thing down and say, oh, this proves Hillary was treated unfairly and now it's time to just let it go. No, it isn't. It's time to have a proper investigation, because these are serious allegations of felony espionage crimes. And even Comey admitted that in that bizarre media, press conference, where he went down that laundry list of felony Title 18 violations committed by Hillary Clinton and then said she didn't mean to do wrong, so we're letting her go, even though Title 18 does not require intent. Now, the actual report was released publicly only about 2 hours ago, and there's a lot of people out there trying to tell you what it says in the hope you will not bother to read it for yourself, which at 500 pages long, it's going to be an issue. But some people are reading it, and a lot of stuff is starting to surface. Descriptions about what went on with the Clinton tarmac meeting, and how after it was all over, Loretta Lynch just looked gray and very stressed out by what had gone down. And the IG report confirms that FBI agent Strzok texted, "We'll stop Trump from becoming president," which is interesting because on the FBI's official server, where all the text messages are saved, that one text is now missing, supposedly according to a glitch. So, anyway, the IG report also found out that FBI agents regularly received free handouts from journalists. And they identified a lot of instances where FBI employees, well, that's something that definitely is a tacky no-no. But again, if there's one, and by the way, Larry Klayman's already out there saying, I told you it wasn't going to go anywhere. It looks like they're going to focus on Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, going to throw them under the bus. That's going to be the end of it. That's it. That's where it cuts off. Those are the sacrificial lambs right there. And that ridiculous statement that there was no political bias on the part of Comey, it is ridiculous because it leaves us without a motive. That's the missing piece. To find out if you're being lied to, look for what should be there and isn't. And in Horowitz's report, they do not include a motive for James Comey to have done what he did. And that motive is what is the important part. Everything else we already knew. We already knew all the rest of it. It's a limited hangout. We're going to basically tell you what you already know, but no more than that. We're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And just let me give my throat a clear here. We're still dealing with a little bit of fog up on the island here. Turning over to the war zones, following up on the story that was just breaking at end of show yesterday. The Saudi coalition attempted to invade the Yemen port of Hodeidah, and they ran into a problem where the Houthis attacked one of the United Arab Emirates warships that was attempting to land troops and equipment on the shore, and they damaged it severely. Some reports are saying it even sunk, and I guess that came as a real surprise to the Saudi-led coalition because at that point the landings were called off, and they settled in for just pounding the area with airstrikes. Reportedly 250 of the Houthis are dead, 160 have been captured. And by the way, if you see this in the corporate media anywhere, you will notice a very strange thing. Anytime they talk about the Houthis, they're described as rebels and always prefaced with Iran-backed. See, this is all Iran's fault. This is all Iran's fault. No, it isn't. It's the United States' fault. Some years back, they went on in, overthrew the legitimate government of Yemen, and installed a puppet ruler. And the people of Yemen don't like living under puppet rule, so they're trying to take their country back. That's what's going on. And the U.S., using Saudi Arabia as a proxy, is trying to slap those Houthis down and saying, look, once you're part of the American empire, you stay a part of the American empire. So as of right now, the Yemeni troops have repelled the Saudi attack on Hodeidah port, and this may give the United Nations a little more time to come on in and take control of the harbor. Because that's what the United Nations said they were going to do. The Houthis are saying they will surrender the harbor to UN control, which takes it off the battlefield. And the reason for that is to guarantee that humanitarian aid to the northern part of Yemen will continue. Okay. The naval force of the Yemeni Army and Popular Committee targeted Wednesday morning a naval battleship, this is a poor translation, of U.S.-Saudi aggression in the west coast during an attempt to advance toward Hodeidah coast. And a source in the naval forces told Al Masirah Net that 2 missiles targeted a hostile battleship off Hodeidah coast. Smoke rose from the targeted battleship after being hit directly, which prompted other battleships of aggression to cell phone video of the ship getting hit and bursting into flames has been making the rounds on the internet here. And again, some reports are saying the ship was may have been sunk. Okay. So they're calling it, from the Saudi point of view, they're calling it the liberation of the port. Forgetting, of course, that the Yemenite people, that's their country and that's their harbor. What they're trying to do is get their own government back. But we have to liberate Hodeidah from its rightful owners so we can starve them to death. That's what's going on here right now. And the attack, they were trying to launch a ground operation that apparently is on hold right now, but it is still being followed by air attacks and long-range artillery and rocketry from naval forces out there in the Gulf. Meanwhile, over near Syria, a U.S. naval carrier attack group centered on the aircraft carrier USS Harry coast of Syria. ostensibly for operations against ISIS. And if you believe that one, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you. We are still hearing warnings from sources in the Russian media. There's going to be another false flag chemical attack to allow the United States to lose any one of these wars right now. The first one they're seeing losing, what little popular support they have in this country for these wars, will basically collapse. Now, Bashar al-Assad is out there doing interviews with TV. He was on the Al-Alam News Network and basically said that from the point of view of the Syrian government and the Syrian people, the U.S., French, Turkish, and Israeli troops are occupying forces. They're in Syria illegally. And basically, it's time for them to leave. He said that Syria's position is to support any act of resistance, whether against terrorists or against occupying forces, regardless of their nationality. So he's out there saying Syria is going to start treating these occupying forces the same way they're treating the terrorists. And the terrorists are not doing very well. Now, obviously, Israel, the U.S., and France have nuclear weapons, and Assad has to take that into consideration. But Assad may be ready to take a stand to try and set an example, knowing it's high risk, but if he succeeds in getting the U.S. out of Syria, it could derail the U.S. agenda for war across the rest of the Middle East. And Assad strikes me as the kind of man who's willing to take that gamble. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has authorized another $6.6 million in aid to the White Helmets. Now remember, these are the people who faked up that Duma chemical attack. There was no chemical attack. It was a regular bombing. People were choking on the dust. They went to the hospital. All of a sudden, the White Helmets come on in, dump pails of water all over everybody, spritz them with these little aspirators, and make a video and say, see, it was a chemical weapons attack. So Trump just gave him another $6.6 million to lie to you with. Trump is starting to come out with these bogus statements that don't make any sense. And according to this story out of Oraz.com, Donald Trump appears to be saying that he could solve the Syria crisis by asking Putin to do him a favor. All he's got to do is sit down with Putin and ask a few favors of Putin, and the Syria crisis will be over. Now, that is utterly ridiculous. The only thing that Trump could ask for is for Putin to just get on out of Syria, and Putin's not going to do that until the U.S. gets out of Syria. But for Trump to make that, I think he's spending a little too much time on his Twitterverse. Meanwhile, video has surfaced again. This confirms the report of heavy armor moving in the direction of Donetsk from Kiev. And apparently this has prompted a response from Russia over Ukrainian provocations. And Russia is saying that Ukraine is showing a desire to draw attention to itself at the moment when the whole world is following the World Cup, and it can have sad consequences. So Ukraine's formation of various impact groups near the Russian borders during the football game is a hope there will be an intensification of relations with Russia. So everybody is goading everybody else on out there as well. Now, there's this photographer who lives in Libya. And back in 2000, he went around taking pictures of Libya with himself in them, selfies. And then 18 years later, he went on back and took photos in the exact same locations with himself. And it just shows, it illustrates the utter devastation that Libya has suffered ever since Gaddafi was taken out and the Golden Hour vanished, and that whole situation with Benghazi. And this is not the only guy to do that, because if you go on out and you do a web search, it's a little hard because this is something that the U.S. government doesn't want you to see. But you can find before and after photos of every place the U.S. has gone on in, whether it's up in Kabul, Baghdad, any of these places, and you see the before pictures, and they look lovely. And you see the after pictures, and it's just a ruin. And you need to confront the utter devastation to the entire world being brought about by all these U.S. wars, which, if Bernie Sanders is to be believed, now number 76 around the globe. Now, people are still reacting to the United Nations General Assembly vote in which 120 countries condemned Israel over the violence in Gaza. And Nikki Haley is still out there saying that, well, you know, there are other countries where their leaders are killing their own people. And she went down the list of ones we already know are lies, about how Iran is killing their own people and Syria is killing their own people. Why are we so focused on Gaza? Well, because bashing Israel has become the top sport here at the United Nations. And I don't think that went over very well with the rest of the United Nations. But it's clear at this point, with 120 votes in favor of the resolution, there were 45 opposed. I'm sorry, no, 8 opposed, 45 abstentions. It's clear that the opinion of the world has turned against Israel. And for people like Nikki Haley or the New York Times, the New York Slimes, who are out there still trying to spin this as somehow a positive for Israel, and it's all Hamas' fault. Imagine the outcry if it were Israelis that were being held in a giant open-air prison like Gaza, and somebody was shooting through the fences to kill 120 of them. What would your reaction be then? Oh, you're just bashing Palestine is just sport at the UN. We know what's going on over there. The world is looking at it. They're seeing it with their eyes. And I don't know about you, but I am thoroughly ashamed that Nikki Haley is our ambassador on at the United Nations. Just totally ashamed here. Okay, I'm getting emails that there's lots of buffering on the show here. Let me see, YouTube or RBN. Of course, as you know, 2 days ago, net neutrality ended, and that means we're going to be moved off into the slow lane here. All right, let's take a phone call. Neil in California, aloha. I'm going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael, Claire, in the United States of America. I hope all you islanders are doing good. I hear about the fog and all that. So,
yes.
Wow. I just kind of finished slowly 1984. I got the box edition of the Orwell writings, and it sounds like, I don't know, everybody's trying to reclaim their portions.
Okay,
like you were talking about the oligarchy. Yeah.
Neil, I got to put you on hold. Do not hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I've gotten a couple of emails that the audio on the YouTube stream of this show is really buffering. So it's either YouTube imposing censorship, or we're starting to see the effects of the loss of net neutrality. But in any event, I obviously need to find a different live streaming video service, and recommendations are welcome. So going on back to Neil in California, and you're talking about 1984, and of course, George Orwell wrote that as a warning, not as an instruction manual.
I completely agree with that. It appears that everybody's sitting around going, we can't do anything against anybody else. We just need to reclaim territories and, you know, things we can use. So it's more talk than anything else. And I want to say what you were talking about right before I chimed in was, Nikki Haley needs to be removed. She turns my stomach every time I hear her talk. Literally, there were how many hundreds of countries in opposed to what Israel's doing right now, and she's standing there.
She's made it very obvious. She's Israel's whore, as is pretty much all of the entire U.S. federal government. And everybody knows it. Everybody sitting in that United Nations chamber knows that's what's going on.
As an American, I don't want a constitutional amendment or a con, whatever they call that damn thing. I want an amendment put into the Bill of Rights that you cannot represent anyone in the United States if you have a dual citizenship with any other country. You need to be American born, and you need to stand behind the people. So let's go back to 1984, and they're changing the history before our faces by what was the news this morning, was they're going to investigate Trump family and their, what do you call it, contributional charity.
Their foundation.
When that's the foundation, which that's what the IG report is reporting on, is Hillary and her foundation. So
no, that's not what the IG report. That's not what the IG report reported on. This IG report was about the investigation into Hillary's email server. But you're right. This fanning up of the foundation, Trump Foundation issue, is an attempt to basically level the playing field by the Democrats, who understand that even though the IG report is a limited hangout, it's still very damaging. The optics on it are bad. And yes, they were able to build a firewall between this investigation and the actual email server itself, but it shouldn't be there. The sum of this IG report is that the investigation was handled improperly. So the next step is, let's have a proper investigation by somebody without political bias who's going to do it properly. Let's get Larry Klayman up there. Larry Klayman's champing at the bit.
No, I love this idea because literally it needs to happen. It getting leaked out. Half the problem people are leakers, and you have some of the highest people at the highest position leaking these leaks. So, yes, an investigation on the investigation is needed, and the more the original investigation happens, the more that this kind of comes out that, yeah, we need to look into this, that, and that thing. And that's why I kind of said, I'm not a 100% Trump supporter because he allows Nikki Haley to sit in the UN right now. But he is doing a lot of that draining the swamp thing we talked about earlier. That I said he's letting himself get walked on. He's watching and looking around him, and he's allowing a lot of stuff that most other people would never allow to happen. And I think there was an incident where he sat there, and it was put on CBS News, all the TV news, and it was about the immigration thing. He's all, bring it all on. Put everything on the table in front of me. Bring it on. I'll take it. I'll take the heat. I'll do that. Okay. And that told me, okay, he might not be completely sold out, but a lot of things, allowing Nikki Haley to keep talking and some of the other things, I don't want to go into. Let's focus on let's drain the swamp. And what I see right now, I didn't hear this yesterday. I hear it first thing this morning when I get out of bed on the radio, was they're investigating Trump and their foundation.
Yep.
Well, that's all of Hillary's problem, was the foundation.
No, it's a different foundation. We're talking two different foundations. They're talking the Trump Foundation, not the Clinton Foundation.
No, exactly. They're trying to put the focus on the Trump Foundation,
yes,
which probably did nothing wrong, when the Hillary Clinton Foundation was the repository for pay to play.
Okay, well, Neil, thank you very much for the phone call. We've got to let you go. We've got to take another break for commercials. We've got more callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. Again, they're going to slap some low-level people around. and that's going to be the end of it. It is a cover-up. Larry Klayman is absolutely right. It's just another government cover-up. This thing is as bogus as the Warren report.
Yeah, there's no justice in this. They should have just they kept them waiting all this time. This was the whole thing. The hook. They said, well, we got to wait for the IG report. We got to wait for the IG report. No, they could have independently of the IG report. They should have gone ahead and had a second counsel 6 months ago.
I absolutely agree here. I absolutely agree here. And again, the one thing that is very obvious from this IG report is this was an improperly conducted investigation into the issue of Hillary's private email server. So we need a properly conducted investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server.
Right. I don't think that's ever going to happen. She's just going to skate. She might even run again in 2020, which would be amazing. But
well. That's going to be an interesting replay because we're getting word that Bernie Sanders may step back in 2020, which, I'm thinking about maybe backing him. But we'll see how the field is going to shake on out. Personally, I don't think Hillary is electable in 2020. They were literally propping her up in 2016, and I can't imagine that by 2020 her health is going to have improved. Apparently, she's been seen walking around with some kind of a brace on, which may suggest she's actually dealing with some serious osteoporosis issues. Anyway, Don, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I just heard something disturbing on InfoWars earlier. Owen Schroyer, they said that the funding for the white helmets has once again been increased.
Yes.
Have they decreased it? I don't know if you heard that. I looked it up. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it on. I Googled it and all that. Did a search on it. I couldn't find it at this point yet.
Yes, but, Trump is sending them $6.6 million.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's what he said. See, every time I think I might be willing to get back on that Trump train, he does something like this. Now, I don't know whether he doesn't understand how he turns so many of his supporters off by doing this, or whether maybe somebody's holding literally a gun to his head and telling him you better do this or else, or whether he's listening to that creep there. What's his name?
Sheldon Adelson.
No, it's Sheldon Adelson, but the creep is his son-in-law there,
Kushner. Yeah. Well, it's turning out, from where I sit, Trump is proving to be a very weak leader because he's very easily swayed by his advisors, and he's got all the wrong advisors around him. He's very susceptible to flattery, and he's beginning to, I think he's letting being in the White House and being the president get to his head. He's going to be a prima donna by the time 2020 gets around here.
Well, what he did in Korea with the North Koreans, I kind of agree. I mean, I don't think we should be there at all. Personally, my opinion is all troops should be taken away from the four corners of the world and brought back to the United States. Our defense, which is really to police the world budget, should be cut in half, and we should worry about defending this country and taking care of the problems. And that's fine. But if we are going to be involved, he probably did the right thing there with Mr. Allen there. But as far as
I disagree with that. I have to disagree because nothing has actually changed yet. Trump came out with that comment about how the nuclear threat from North Korea is now over. That was a very reckless and premature statement to make. And the administration is sending John Bolton and Mike Pompeo to negotiate with the senior North Korean diplomats over a potential implementation of the agreement. But Mike Pompeo and John Bolton never wanted the agreement to happen in the first place. So they're absolutely the worst people to send on over there. To me, that's going to sabotage the possibility of anything positive actually happening. Now, what happened at the summit is Kim Jong-un bolstered his prestige on the world stage by having that one-on-one meeting with the President of the United States of America. Donald Trump got to look like he's playing the peacemaker for at least a short interval, so he came away happy about that. But other than that, nothing has really been accomplished yet. Personally, I think we've got a better chance of seeing the Koreas reunify than there of being any kind of a deal between the United States and North Korea.
Well, that's personally what I think. If they can work it out between themselves, North and South Korea should get together, work out something, whether they become one nation again or a quasi one nation, and tell the U.S. to pound sand, get the heck out, get out of there, and then they could denuclearize or whatever they want to do, and that would be the best thing. And any agreement we should have is that if he does denuclearize, we should get our troops, every one of them, every one of the 30,000 American soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, whoever they have there, should get out, period. They don't belong there. I'm sick and tired of this. I mean, our tax money is funding all this garbage. We're constantly risking wars. We're constantly getting into wars. Americans are dying for what? And they're killing people for what? To satisfy a bum like Sheldon Adelson? If I had my way, Sheldon Adelson would have all his wealth confiscated. I'd find some way to either tax him or do something to confiscate every dollar that crook has, and that's what. And I would do a lot with a lot of these billionaires. Now, with Trump, as far as the other thing with the police state, with Comey and all these people, when he took over, if he really had the guts that he says he has, or the Kaonohis, he would have taken U.S. troops, a certain amount of U.S. troops who we can count on, who were actually friendly to him, and said, "I want you to raid the FBI, Justice Department, IRS, CIA, raid all their headquarters and seize all computers, all files, anything, all paperwork that they have, period. And then gone through it with a fine tooth comb, with then use professional investigators to go through it, and lawyers and whoever else, accountants, whoever else he needed to go through those things." That's what he should have done. He still could do it if he wanted. The man is not what people try to make him out to be. He's not that gutsy.
No, he's not.
He's a big show, but if you push him, he folds like a cheap camera. Why do you think he's doing this with the white helmet? He can't be that stupid. And you have to be really dumb. You have to be just about retarded to believe that Assad ever gassed his own people in any of those incidents, including the one going back to when Obama was still president.
I don't know. Maybe Trump is not as savvy as a lot of people claim that he is. Maybe he actually does believe the U.S. propaganda. But that, of course, is a very dangerous thing, because no leader of any country should believe his own country's propaganda. You're going to be making plans based on fantasies, and that's a very dangerous thing to do.
Well, if he believes that Assad gassed his own people, especially the last 2 years there, if he actually believes that, when it's so obvious that he didn't and that was a false flag, he's too stupid then to be president if he actually believes it. He's really too dumb to be president of the United States.
Well, he's a disappointment. As a matter of fact, he's a disappointment, no question about that. But and again, in my defense, the only reason I supported Donald Trump was I didn't want Hillary in that Oval Office. And again, it shows.
I'm saying I supported him during the primary and voted for him in the primary, the North Carolina primaries, because I thought he was not going to be. I thought just the opposite. I thought he was going to take on these neocons and these globalists who want to be a policeman of the world and all that. I thought he was going to stop it. That's why. That's one of the main reasons. I wanted Rand Paul, but Rand Paul unfortunately didn't know how to run a good campaign. He ran a bad campaign from the get-go. Right? I think he tried to please too many people. He tried to make deals with the mainstream Republican Party, and he never should have done that. And then he made a fool out of himself when he took on Trump and actually defended the Republican Party in that first debate when they asked him whether he'd run as a third party, when they asked Trump whether he'd run as a third party or not. That pretty much finished him right there as far as Rand Paul. And it's a shame other than that, they were all neocons. There were a bunch of neocons running. I remember what's that woman's name? Owns the computer. Used to own the computer company there.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Used to be CEO of Hewlett Packard.
Hewlett Packard, right? Anyway, she came on one of the debates. The first thing she said, it was about foreign policy. The first thing she would do is she would ask Netanyahu what he needs and make sure he got it. At that point, I said to myself, "Whoa, out of here! You don't even merit any kind of consideration." And then Rubio, I remember, was talking about when Turkey shot down that Russian aircraft that time, and Rubio says, "Well, we better be prepared for Article 5 and all this garbage." But then again, I pretty much knew Rubio was basically Bush Jr., was Jeb Bush Jr., so it didn't surprise me too much when he said that. But when that woman said that, I mean, I said, what the heck is it? Netanyahu? What? Netanyahu's not our president. Netanyahu's a crook. He's scum. He's not worth the time of the day. And yet they keep on trying to placate this guy. I don't know whether he has something to do with the white helmets now, too. Wouldn't surprise me. What is going on with this country?
It's gone in a bad direction. There's no question about it. I mean, we're seeing the wealth, the accumulated wealth of 200 years plus of the labors of the American people being siphoned off and stripped by Wall Street, by Israel, by the war machine. We've got half of Americans can't pay for food and rent at the same time. We're in a really, really terrible condition here. And we have a government that's out there, like the former Soviet Union, trying to propagandize us that everything is okay and the economy's fine and we're projecting our might across the globe. And again, I foresee a Soviet Union-style collapse for this government somewhere down the road. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it looks to me like it's definitely on the way.
Actually, from what I can tell, all these sanctions against Russia is doing nothing but making Russia stronger. Okay,
yes,
making more deals
backfired.
More respect than ever from a lot of different sources, and they're making business deals like going out of style. On top of that, they're not anywhere near the debt that we are, and they have enough brains to accumulate gold and silver on top of it.
Yes.
So Russia's, I think, we were talking about it one day before. I said, well, why didn't Russia start sinking some of those ships when they attacked Syria? But then again, you're right. I think Putin is just sitting back and say, these fools want to destroy themselves. Why get in their way?
Well, I think Putin is definitely playing the global peacemaker, and he's trying to keep this situation from escalating because he understands if it gets out of control, and it's already looking to get out of control, sooner or later somebody's going to push the red button on one of those nuclear weapons, and then everybody's going to panic and launch their weapons out of fear that a preemptive strike against their arsenals is already inbound. And that's going to be rough.
I know you're big into science and all that and then computers and all. I'm sure you've seen the Terminator series. Every time one of them comes on, I watch it again.
Yes.
I mean, I'm fascinated by it because I can see something like this happening. Okay, it was the machine. Well, the machines took control and fired the missiles from both the U.S. and Russia to each other at that point, and it turned us to basically like a road warrior type of thing with the machines running the Earth. I could actually see something like this happening. Okay, we're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Plus, with this artificial intelligence, I don't trust. On top of it, I can really see, unfortunately, a Terminator situation happening. We're making more and more powerful. I see some of these robots they're playing with. These things are very big, strong, and athletic.
Yes,
and it looks like they're ready to turn them into some kind of super soldier. And I'm sure Russia's doing the same thing because they have to. We're all trying to keep up with each other. As a matter of fact, the Chinese and the Japanese are probably further ahead on robots than either of us.
Oh,
so,
definitely the Japanese are. Some of the stuff that Japan has done is just amazing.
Amazing, but it's scary at the same time. Because I could see the day when all this stuff like you see in science fiction, comes true. Because once you got an artificial intelligence like that, and they realize they're much stronger and smarter than the humans, why are they going to let the humans continue to dominate them? They're going to have self-awareness. They're going to say, no, it's not going to happen. We're the boss. You're not. Matter of fact, we're going to do away with you.
Well,
that's what I see happening.
There's an issue there that you're overlooking, and that is that you're presuming artificial intelligence will have the same drives and emotions that we humans do. And that is not likely to happen because artificial intelligent computers are built, they did not evolve. And they don't have the survival instincts that humans and other evolved life forms do. So we may discover that they're not really going to be aggressive after all, unless that's intentionally programmed into them for military purposes. But again, it's not even a case of aggression. It's simply that's the target, you destroy it. And there's no empathy with the target, again, because emotions are something that come out of our evolutionary drives, and I don't think you'll see them in artificial intelligence systems. Anyway, Mark, I got to let you go. Okay. We got to take a break for commercials. More phone calls when we come back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go right back to the phones. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, the Extendivite guy had numb hands, and we got numb nuts in the White House.
Send him a bottle of Extendivite.
Well, I want people to think about this who still support Trump's not dumb because we all voted for him. So that says something, doesn't it? You know? Well, I mean, we got fooled.
I think a lot of it really was, same to my case, we just didn't want Hillary in there. And I think that was a big reason why Trump won. We were voting for not Hillary.
You know, like the lesser of two evils, but still evil. You know, yes. Mike, what kills me is the white helmets. He takes the funding away and he gives it back. That's aiding and abetting terrorists. They are part of our news front.
Yes, they are.
My God. $6 million of taxpayer money.
Yes.
Where's all the Trump supporters on that? That's a tax break for our news front.
Yep.
You know? Totally ridiculous. And why did he pull the funding in the first place? He knew who these people are then if he pulled the funding, right?
Yes.
So then, you know, how does anybody explain why he gave it back?
Probably because they need to finance a new big bloody false flag attack in Syria to launch the next war. And we're seeing all the indications. We've been hearing warnings from Russian sources that there's planning for a new big messy false flag. You've got the carrier group based on the Teddy Roosevelt heading toward the coast there. And it looks like we're going to see another replay. There's going to be a false flag attack. Trump is going to get up there and say the war is on, and they're going to haul on off and just blow up a lot of Syria. And this time they may go for a decapitation strike against Assad himself.
Yeah, supposedly they brought in, they're going to be maybe using some kind of balloons, so with chlorine or something and whatever. But like, hey, isn't it crazy? You got that plus the Ukraine going on right as the World Cup starts. It's reminiscent, Mike, of the Olympic Games in 2004, I believe it was, right?
Yes. Yeah, you know, a lot of stuff is getting, done under cover of something else and distractions. And I can imagine that probably if the situation in Syria escalates or Ukraine escalates, that Israel is going to intensify what they're doing in Gaza.
And I'm going to switch gears on a caller from Canada. That was like a couple of days ago, saying like, our countries and the U.S. is in bad shape. I mean, I saw an interview with Jack Ma. He's like the founder of the CEO of Alibaba, right? And yes. He says the U.S. spent. I mean, he's not a dummy, and neither are the Chinese. The U.S. spent $14.5 trillion over 30 years in all of our wars. We didn't build up no infrastructure. We've got nothing left here, Mike.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yep.
And that's our legacy now. You know, that's it.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, and the nation is a hollowed out husk of what it used to be. We've absolutely been bled dry. And it's just been bad government, one bad corrupted government after the other after the other. And it all goes back, first of all, to the founding of the Federal Reserve, and second, to the removal of campaign donation limits, especially from corporations. Anyway, we're going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're going to go back to the phones. Joe in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I'm just watching this Trump in the war with the deep state and kind of enjoying it. I hear some of the alarmed callers, and I agree about the foreign policy deep state war that Trump is having and whether he's siding with the right people in that war. But I must say, in this war against the deep state in the Justice Department and the FBI, I'm ecstatic. Trump is doing his job as the great exposer. Every week, more of these clowns like Trey Gowdy, they just seem to throw themselves on the barbed wire. And I think Trump, that whole report is going to just expose a whole nother level of them, all their propagandists and mockingbirds on the media. And it's not over at all. This is just the beginning. I mean, Trump has got the NSA intercepts. He knows the conversations. They're probably making threats against his life. That hasn't come out yet. It's probably buried. And then you get to the level of who was burying these statements.
Joe,
Yes?
I'm sorry to cut in on you, but you need to sort of back off
I get rolling.
the adrenaline here a little bit and understand something about this Inspector General report. All that was in it was stuff that we in the independent media already knew. And then they put a brick wall behind it. And they did that when they said that Comey did what he did, but there was no political bias, which is the biggest hole in the Horowitz report, because they're trying to sell us on the idea that Comey and these other people did what they did for no reason whatsoever, that they went way outside the rails of normal FBI procedure for no reason at all. And nobody's going to buy that. And so we understand these people are being exposed because we're the ones that are working to expose them. But nothing has really changed. They still have their jobs. I mean, Comey obviously got fired. But we're not really getting to the heart of the corruption. They're still protecting that core issue, which in the case of this particular report is that email server. Because if this report says one thing at all, it says the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server was handled improperly. Okay, fair enough. Let's back up and start over and have a proper investigation into that email server and find out who had access to it and whether they were paying for it.
Well, I agree, but they've definitely retreated to a fallback position. And now that's where we're at. And now the next attack mode will be to destroy that fallback position. And you're right. They have rallied around a point. This is their big Inspector General report, appease everybody, try to say Comey was non-political. But that's not, my point is this is not over at all. This is going to just expose a complete another layer of mockingbirds and propagandists. And I'm just ecstatic by it because it's not going to work. They're not going to be able to contain it. It's all about containing and protecting the institution. It's not going to happen. I agree that's what they're attempting to do, but I think the further information that's going to come out is going to be so explosive that it's going to destroy these institutions, and that's my hope. And the other thing I've been pleased with Trump, and at the time I thought it upset me. I was like, why isn't he getting more people from the alternative media at the press, his press conferences, which I still think he should do. But the way the media exposed themselves at these press conferences, it's just amazing. I watched it today, and they didn't hardly ask the question about the Inspector General report. It was all about immigration. It's just, they just show themselves to be so in the tank that
Yes.
Trump just has to sit back and say, watch them.
Well,
Don't
going on
interfere
back,
with your
going
enemy
on
when
back
he's
to
killing him.
earlier point about Trump having members of the independent media in the White House press corps. I think it would be a really good idea. But as of right now, especially with the end of net neutrality, it looks like Donald Trump has turned his back on the independent media, which really was a significant contributor to his election victory. Because we were the ones who were holding the corporate media up to their lies and deception. We were the ones who were out there making sure the public was reminded of the long history of scandals surrounding the Clintons. And now it's almost like Trump, outside of using Twitter, doesn't seem to care about the internet anymore.
Well, he's been really good for Sean Hannity and Fox News, but you're right. I wish he'd help the alternative, which is a big part of his base, or guys like you, and not just you, but stirring up the base that helped get him elected, and Alex Jones and Michael Savage. A lot of these people now, they're getting the short end of the stick, and I just think the media outreach from the Trump administration has been really pathetic as far as the alternative media. Maybe he's scared of being called whatever, but sticks and stones. That's why he got elected, because he wasn't scared of being called names,
Well, I just think he's turned out to be this incredibly weak leader who is going along with the flow inside his cabinet. And I know you're enthusiastic about him, but I'm afraid my enthusiasm for him is definitely on the wane. So, Joe, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. We're going to do a shout out now for our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And we're going to go right back to the phones to Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mr. Mike. The first thing that I wanted to say to you was I've been having an issue listening to your show. There's a call-in number I was calling, and Sprint decided to block me from calling your call-in number to RBN, which I thought was interesting.
I wonder why they would do that. I mean, where are you Well, you're in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And Sprint will not let you call into the Listen Live line.
Yeah. I mean, the guy in the control room, he gave me a couple other numbers to try.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try them after I'm done talking to you. But, I mean, I just thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't know if anybody else has had that problem, or am I the only one that's telling you this?
Well, it does look like we are very much under attack by corporate America, whether it's the corporate media, corporate social media, the telephone companies, the internet carriers. And I'm still getting emails that my feed over YouTube is pretty much unusable at this point. So I'm going to have to find something else. But yeah, we're definitely entering the age of overt suppression of independent media because they want to sell us a war. And they really think. Let's see. I'm getting a message from our control room. Lots of carriers block listen lines to keep people from using phones to listen to conferences and live feeds. Well, that seems kind of strange to me. I mean, a business is a business. If you're paying for that phone line, it's really not the phone company's business what you're using it for, unless you're doing something illegal. But it is getting rather silly. Anyway, listen, Kevin, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. And we're going to go to Dave in Missouri. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, aloha and howdy, Mike. Hope you're having a blessed day, brother.
Thank you.
I've got to tell you, as far as Kevin was concerned, oddly enough, I used the listen line too. And I'm a truck driver, so at nighttime I would put it on RBN and just go to sleep to whoever was on. And I get a call from my cell phone provider, and it's like almost putting me under the gun about who you all were. Almost felt like maybe they thought I was doing sex blogs or something. I didn't know, but I told them they shut my phone off actually, and so I had to tell them no, don't do that again. If you have a question, call me. And since then I haven't had any problem. But that happened 3 or 4 months ago. But anyway, I've got to agree with you about this IG whitewash, and I'm so sick of being right all the time, and I know you are too. Wouldn't it be cool if just once one of those people whose tax dollars, of ours, that they so happily confiscate and spend wildly would do their damn job one time. But we've always said, what they're going to do is distract us down the road with this ball. Oh, the FBI couldn't do it, but the New York City cops were going to get Wiener's material off the laptop out. So, somebody was going to prosecute it one way or another. He didn't go down for the material on the laptop. He went down for sexting. That material's still there. There are still crimes, traitorous crimes on his laptop that nobody's touched. Go ahead.
Well, no, again, my theory here is that everybody inside the Beltway is working to protect the core of the corruption, which is that Clinton Foundation and the Hillary email server. And we're seeing the same kind of protection now starting to surface around the other aspect of espionage in the Congress, the Imran Awan brothers, or the Awan brothers and Imran Awan. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has already said he has no intentions of bringing charges against Imran Awan. And
why? Why is that? I mean, with no explanation as to why, they just get to fail the American people while spending wildly, while living so lavishly above all of our means, living like kings, lording it over us, and refusing to do their job without even a reasonable explanation as to why. So, yeah, we always knew, you and I knew all along, and have been saying it, this IG report, it's going to be a whitewash. What did they do? They semi-throw Comey under the bus because he's already lost his job, which is really rare among this particular circle of people, and they don't want anybody else to. So, Comey, might have, but no, he didn't mean anything. And Loretta, she just confused people with her statements to the press, not what her and Bill talked about on the tarmac, the substance of that. No, that's all gone. So, man, this whole thing is a whitewash and a cover-up. And this IG, it bothers me. Who is Horowitz? Is he a dual citizen? Is he? It just makes me wonder, man. I mean, people were talking about his integrity. Yeah, I'd always question that, and this is proof that no, he's another shill.
No, the reports that we got was that he was under tremendous pressure from Rod Rosenstein and from the leadership of Department of Justice and the FBI to water this down to protect their image. But the issue here is everybody inside the Beltway, they want to keep their job. If the American people were confronted with the reality of a massive espionage scandal inside Congress and the State Department, if they had to confront all of that corruption inside the Clinton Foundation, that would unravel all the way back to Arkansas in the 1980s and CIA-sanctioned gun and drug running. The federal government
you and I both know that will never. You and I both know that will never happen because they have lulled the people to sleep.
Hang on. The point I'm making is the federal government would not survive a scandal of that magnitude, and that's why everybody's working to protect this. They want to hang on to their jobs. They want to keep sucking the money out of the American people. They want to keep, working around Washington, D.C. and having all that kind of fun that they like to have. It's one big party town over there, and that's what they're protecting.
Yeah, if you were soulless and had no integrity, you might want a job like that too, Mike. Where do these people come from? Oh, I forgot. Harvard, Yale, all the endowed universities. Anyway, I'm going to cut you loose, brother. But yeah, I just wanted to add my voice to those who are not fooled by this. We always knew it was coming. There will be no justice for these people because there is no justice left in this country. And to believe so, you're deluding yourself at a magnitude. Hey, man, I've got a bridge to sell you. Please give me your number. Get it to Mike and get it to me. Anyway, brother, God bless you, folks. Please support RBN and do not believe or trust a thing out of this government. Peace out.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call here. And we are going to switch over to Veronica in Iowa. Aloha, Veronica. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Veronica, are you there?
Versus, yes. Am I on or no?
Yes, you're on the air and I can hear you.
Okay, good. We had a little complication there. It sounded like the guy that had the cell phone problem, and there are a lot of problems getting through to Freedom Radio shows. Anyway, how do you feel about MeWe versus Facebook? Stratosphere Lounge has had to move there. Natural News has had to move there. Judy Morris, who was very, very active with Ron Paul, has been axed from Facebook now. and she has moved to MeWe. How do you feel about MeWe?
I haven't really looked at it. I really haven't had the time to look at it. Now that Claire's Choir is on hiatus, I have a little more time where I can start looking for things like new social media platforms to expand what really happened onto. I've quit using Twitter. I've quit using Facebook. And obviously now I'm going to have to quit using YouTube, at least for the streaming portion of the radio broadcast, because apparently, whether it's YouTube censoring me or the result of the end of net neutrality, apparently the signal is not coming through on the other end.
Right. Natural News also had to stop using YouTube. They censored everything, blocked everything. He's developing his own now. Good for him. But when you get a chance, look at MeWe. They're really growing quickly. They had some stumbling blocks when they first got started, but they've got a good team working for them now, and they're good folks. So if you get time, look it over.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. And I'd forgotten.
So should everybody else. The more we can get there and get away from Facebook. I mean, so many people are just have the addiction to Facebook, and it's like smoking. Quit. You don't
well,
have to
if you're trying to get the truth out about what's going on, if you're just sharing pictures about your vacation, Facebook is fine. If all you're interested in are cute videos, YouTube is fine. But those of us who are trying to restore the republic, we definitely need new social media platforms. So, anything else, Veronica?
That is definitely what MeWe is about. That is you just described MeWe right there.
Okay, how's that spelled?
MEWE.
All right, and there it is. All right, I will take a look at that, and thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch to Bob behind enemy lines. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I didn't mean to call in the other day and get you all blushing and everything, thanking you for your time, and but I did mean it. I don't mean to change subjects on you, but actually what you guys were just discussing is kind of a segue into it. I'm looking at this George Soros here doing his thing again, and he's decided to throw, a little over $3 million worth of shares into the New York Times. Well, they're on a failing mission. I'm not really too impressed with him, so I guess it's a good match. But, after I looked into it a little bit further, I realized that even by back in 2011 or 2012, he'd already invested $50 million into our journalism here in this country.
Yes.
And, I was just wondering if he was using the New York Times here as a loss leader, knowing that he wasn't going to make anything out of it for the pure sake of causing disruption in this year's election. It seems to be right up his alley.
Well, it's no secret that most corporate media is losing money, but it is subsidized by very wealthy investors solely for the purpose of being able to influence public opinion.
Yep, brings me right back to the point. Yeah, I guess you're answering my question for me right there. I figured I'd ask the redundant question just for the sake of everybody putting a little bit of brain cell into kind of considering it and thinking over the ramifications of what this means. We've got so many things going wrong in our country. I know when I called the other day, I kind of got off on a tangent about how upset I am to be sitting here in California, but it isn't just California. There's a lot of problems. And I hate to agree with some of your previous callers, but I think we're looking at a negative outlook. I don't see a whole lot of way out of this without things going in a direction that I'd certainly prefer they didn't. Whether it be a bank crash or a new war, a false flag, a civil war, I don't really need any one of those to be intruding upon my life right now. I'm trying to live here in a free America,
Well, I'm in agreement with you.
Imagine we can live in free America.
I don't want to see either one of these things happen either, but we're going to have to go through something because obviously things cannot continue as they are for much longer. The economy is overstressed and it's fragile. We're at war in anywhere between 7 and 76 countries, depending upon who you're listening to. We have this huge globalist versus nationalist soft civil war, if you will, that's going on. And it's really intense. Anyway, listen, Bob, got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones now. Chris in Cleveland. Aloha, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. How are you doing?
Doing fine.
Yeah, I was calling about, I heard you talking about new platforms for social media and live streaming, I think, is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm looking for a replacement for YouTube where I can stream the radio show for people who actually have a desire to see my face at the same time I'm talking.
Right. I was just going to make a quick suggestion if you're at all familiar with Steam It.
That's STEE.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the ones I'm going to be looking at. Somebody just sent me a list of the 10 alternatives to YouTube, and I'm going to be going through that.
Yeah, they have a thing called D Live. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's like a offshoot or it's an affiliation, but they have a live streaming thing, especially if you're using a PC. I experimented a little bit with it just over Android phone, and not so easy that way, but I think if you have a dedicated PC, you can definitely get up on that. And then, my other suggestion would be to follow what the younger kids are doing with this stuff, because what they do is they'll stream out to like 7 or 8 different things at once, and it's like Twitch is one of them. I don't know all this stuff they do, but
yeah, well, that's just to their groups here. What I need is to be able to take a video of the radio show and have it show up on a player on my screen that everybody will see when they go to my website. And that means it's going to take a moderately large server to actually do that. But I'm going to be trying to work over that over the weekend.
D-Live.
Sorry?
Live. D-Live.
Yes, I've heard of that one before.
Yeah, that should do the trick for you. At least replace YouTube and then add other ones. The thing is, you have to apply to it. It's like it takes a couple days. It involves cryptocurrency exchanges and stuff. So it's like registering on the blockchain somehow. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but
well, I'll definitely be looking at that. I'll be looking at that, and
yeah.
Okay. All right. So
it's
thanks an awful lot. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Okay, getting on back to the news here. We were talking about Israel and how the United Nations General Assembly has voted to condemn Israel's violence against the people of Gaza, and how Israel has crossed not just one red line, but 2. First of all, the shooting of these unarmed protesters with these butterfly bullets, followed by the killing of a Palestinian medic. Not the only one. They've been targeting the medics. And despite all of the media spin and screaming, the world's eyes are open, and they're starting to say, Israel's doing wrong. And all the screams of anti-Semite aren't going to shut me up. By the way, somebody just sent me a picture of Nikki Haley at the Wailing Wall, and I guess that says it all, what's going over there. But Bernie Sanders apparently is considering another try at the White House in 2020, and I might be inclined to support him. But he's actually coming out and he's being critical of Israel, and he's taking it mainstream. And I think it's time that people start doing that. It's time to start openly saying Israel is no better or worse than any other country. They do make mistakes, they do commit crimes, and that's what's going on. And they're not immune to... Well, we just lost our connection to Twitch, it looks like. And There we are. And we're still here? Okay, we're still here. So we need to have the courage of our convictions. We need to be able to stand up and say, look, Israel's behaving badly, because that's what we're talking about, behavior. And all this, anti-Semitism and Jew hate, it's been admitted. That's just to get you to shut up. And we refuse to be silent any longer. Because what we're talking about is not somebody's ethnicity. We're not talking about their religion. We're not talking about their culture or how they dress. We're talking about the actions of the people inside the government of Israel who are committing war crimes and ought to be held to account for it. Nobody should be above the law. Nobody should be above international law. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and people are starting to send in all kinds of suggestions for alternatives to YouTube, and it looks like there's some really good ones out there. So hopefully over the weekend I'll have the opportunity to look at and possibly implement one of those. Getting on back to the news here, over in Hebron, Israeli occupation forces arrested a band, a bunch of musicians in Hebron under the pretext of incitement. So again, Israel is doing these things. They don't understand how it looks to the rest of the world. And you're really going to love this one. You're going to love this one. This came out of Middle East Monitor. Apparently, residents of the northern Israeli town Afula demonstrated against the sale of a house to a family of Palestinian citizens. This was coming out of Haaretz. And the protest was attended by Afula Mayor Abi Elkabetz and Deputy Mayor Shlomo Malihi saw 150 local residents with Israeli flags carrying signs condemning those who sold their home to Palestinians. One sign read, "Traitors against the Jews will get no rest." Now, the mayor of the town came on out defending this, saying, the residents of Afula don't want a mixed city, but rather a Jewish city, and it's their right. This is not racism. Well, of course, you moron, it's racism. That's exactly what it is. It's apartheid. Can you imagine what would happen if there was an all-white community here in the United States and one of the homeowners had to move and sold their home to a black family, and all of a sudden all the white families in the area were protesting in front of the black house? How do you think the American corporate media would treat it? They'd explode. They'd go crazy. They'd be calling back references to the KKK. Up in Germany, there is this music festival called the Ruhrtrainel Festival. I think I pronounced that correct. And there is a band called Young Fathers. They're very good. They've won awards, but they're also supporters of Palestinian rights, and they have just been uninvited by this German music festival, and there are now calls for boycott against the music festival itself. All right, let's take another phone call. Laura in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Well, first thing, I've heard people saying that they're listening to RBN on their telephones. I want to suggest to everybody, I bought a Wi-Fi radio that I can get RBN and all the channels on. And anybody that's got access to Wi-Fi can use the Wi-Fi radio. In fact, I liked it so much, I bought one for my bedroom. I really would suggest that to people. If they have access to Wi-Fi, they can use the Wi-Fi radio. I think even some truck drivers, when they pull in, they get access to Wi-Fi. I just want to give that suggestion out.
Well, thank you.
Number two, and number two, recently, last week, Putin had a town hall meeting with his Russian residents where they could ask him any questions. It's his 16th time that he's done that. This town hall lasted 4 hours and 20 minutes. See, the problem with Trump is he's not hearing from the citizens. He's listening to all the press and the people who surround him or whatever. He's not holding a town hall. Yeah, he goes, like this month he's going to Duluth, Minnesota, and he gives a speech, but nobody actually gets to talk to him and tell him how we feel. But he's not realizing it. And I know they say, well, there's that hotline. I don't know that he's even knows what's going on in that hotline or any cards that are sent in. Who knows? I've never heard him
it's all
respond and
processed.
say that
It's all processed. I mean, the mail to the White House it doesn't even go to the White House. It goes to another building where it's checked for security threats. And then it's basically processed. People will look at the questions and they'll tally up how many people are talking about this, how many people are talking about that. And it's very rare that something is so unique and personal that it would be shown to Donald Trump himself. Email, similar thing. It's scanned electronically, and they just sort of takes statistics of what people are talking about. I know Trump posts to his Twitter feed an awful lot. I understand every once in a while he apparently is reading it because he will respond to some people. But the problem with being the leader of a country this size, you are cut off from your population. See, in a small town where everybody knows everybody, you know the mayor, even county-sized government, people know who the government is. But you start getting to state size and larger, and you start seeing that wall of disenfranchisement between the government and the ordinary people. They can't get through. They can't communicate.
I just got to think of this, on the hotline. There's might be lots of people calling in about no wars for Israel, and I don't hear any indication that he understands that how people feel. So I don't know. I look at Putin. He's got a big country. He's holding these big town halls and sitting there for 4 hours listening to his people. I'm tired of getting lectured by Donald Trump. His pretty little speeches. He's giving, and then everybody starts chanting, build a wall or whatever.
Yeah.
Or Nobel Prize. That's all put up, I think.
It very well might be. It very well might be.
Somebody holds his heart up what to say. People need to start thinking for themselves. Somebody needs to go into those rallies and say, no more wars for Israel. And I'm so sick of hearing about them talking about North Korea and the human rights abuses.
Yep.
My God. What about Israel?
What about human rights abuses right here in the United States?
Right. So anyway, the main thing I want to tell everybody, so a lot of people don't know about the Wi-Fi radio, and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I was just looking at them on eBay, and I don't know that it's something I would ever use. Of course, then I said that about the iWatch. But I think the Wi-Fi radio are for people who don't actually have a computer, or they don't want to turn their computer on for hour after hour listening to the radio. But they run about, what, $60, $80, something like that?
I don't want to sit there all day. And these have wonderful speakers. And you can hear them throughout your house. I think on eBay, we just bought one for $42. Now I paid $100. I went directly to Crane and bought one.
Okay.
But you can get on eBay for about $42.
All right. Well, thank you for that piece of information. And yeah, maybe we need to find ways to get our broadcast out there. Because we're having problems with the phone lines, we're having problems with the streaming server, I'm having problems with YouTube. It almost does feel like it's deliberate. Anyway, Laura, thank you very much for the call. Thank you very much for the information on the Wi-Fi radios. And we're going to let you go here. Getting on back to the political news here, Mike Pompeo is saying that the U.S. hopes for major North Korea disarmament by 2020. And apparently we're already seeing the goalposts being moved because they're no longer talking about just the atomic bombs, but they are now starting to make noises about the long-range ballistic missiles, which is exactly the same approach they took to Iran. They had a deal that stopped Iran from doing any nuclear work, and Trump pulls out of it because now he wants to go after the missiles. Now, Trump is out there basically prematurely, in my opinion, declaring victory from the summit. Trump sees an end to North Korea nuclear threat despite an unclear path. And that, of course, was exactly the point I was making yesterday. And it's rare to find myself agreeing with the New York Slimes, but their position is, you know, Trump is out there saying it's an end to the North Korea nuclear threat, but there's no mechanism yet to actually get us there. Nothing has actually changed in North Korea in the reality between before the summit and after. Everything's still the same. North Korea still has the missiles. North Korea still has at least components for nuclear weapons. It didn't really change. And Trump is just, he's going for the image here. And of course, as you know, he's now been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And at least it looks like he did something to deserve it, unlike Barack Obama. Trump is out there saying that even though it's not part of the summit agreement with Kim Jong-un, he would like to get the U.S. military out of South Korea, basically saying that it is a lot of money to maintain these garrisons. And yes, it is a huge amount of money. Now, here's where Trump needs to really be watching what he says. This was from Oraz.com. Trump is claiming that parents of Korean War veterans begged him for help during the campaign, because one of the things they agreed to with Kim Jong-un was the repatriation of the remains of MIA POWs who died in North Korea so they could be identified and sent home. Now, here's the problem. Look at the timeline we're talking about. Anybody who's a parent of a Korean War veteran, they're pushing 100 years old. So it strains the credibility of Trump's statement that the parents of the Korean War veterans begged him for help during the campaign. Down in Nicaragua, a general national strike got underway. And again, it's hard to tell, is this really a grassroots revolution or another U.S.-sponsored color revolution? But there's a national strike protesting against the government's crackdown on a 2-month-long popular uprising against President Daniel Ortega. And apparently, the church is now trying to intervene. They're trying to basically restart talks between the two sides to pull everything back. But there's going to be a 24-hour work stoppage. And of course, that triggered a mad dash to gas stations and supermarkets to stockpile grain, milk, and vegetables. All right, let's take another phone call. Tony in Puerto Rico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, yeah, I was listening to a program of yours a few days ago. You were stating that there are a lot of people of the Jewish faith, right, who are very pissed off with Israel for Bloody Monday.
Especially here in the United States.
Yeah, United States, yeah. My question is this. Do you think a lot of those people, quote-unquote, of the Jewish faith, quote-unquote, will stop circumcising their baby boys? What do you think?
I have no idea. You know, it's certainly doesn't really do anything for the boys that anybody is aware of. It's a religious practice, you know, like piercing of the ears or something else like that, or nose piercing. The only difference, of course, is that in the case of the young Jewish babies, it's done without their permission.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And, okay, the phone lines are open again. Now, apparently, Chinese hackers or somebody hacking and pretending to be Chinese managed to compromise the computers of a Navy contractor and stole 614 gigabytes of data pertaining to the Navy's Naval Undersea Warfare Center, which does R&D on submarine systems. And because of this leak getting on out there, it revealed a previously unknown weapon called the Sea Dragon, which is a submarine-launched supersonic missile capable of both being an air defense missile and an anti-ship missile. This came out of the Washington Post over the weekend. And so there are some interesting things being worked on in the back rooms in the event of a war here. People are starting to talk about Rod Rosenstein, and there was this interesting article that came out of National Review. It says the House Intelligence Committee is investigating whether the government has used the Justice Department's awesome investigative authorities as a weapon against political adversaries. We learned yesterday that in response to this very investigation, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein threatened to use the Justice Department's awesome investigative authorities as a weapon against political adversaries. So I think the investigation is functionally over. And Rosenstein is threatening to subpoena the committee's records. There are differing accounts about why, but in the end, it appears that there is some kind of a conflict going on, and he's acting like it. So it may be time for him to step down. Robert Mueller's in a little bit of hot water because apparently in this latest indictment against Manafort, he may have accidentally exposed names that were supposed to be kept quiet. The special counsel exposed names of former journalists and European politicians allegedly involved in Manafort's secret Ukraine lobbying, and they filed this indictment. And then they took it back and they filed a new version with all the proper redactions. So it's a little bit of a whoopsie, or maybe it was intentional to get the names out there as a form of pressure. But a lot of people are getting tired of Mueller's nonsense, if you will. And Representative Louis Gohmert appeared on Fox and Friends Saturday to discuss the new amendment that just passed the House calling for an audit of Mueller's multi-million-dollar witch hunt. And I imagine that Robert Mueller is not going to be happy about that at all. Now, getting back to the issue of free speech, over in Minnesota, they had passed a law banning any kind of political expression on clothing worn at polling places. The idea being that such clothing represented electioneering at the polling place. But in a 7-2 ruling, the United States Supreme Court has struck down as unconstitutionally vague this Minnesota law. Not because they want electioneering in the polling places, but because it was so vague, it even included messages that would be seen as non-political and non-partisan. All right, we got to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, coming up on the top of the hour. And for some reason, CBS News put out this story last night that Sarah Huckabee Sanders was going to be leaving the White House press secretary. And apparently CBS News was quoting White House sources saying that both Sanders and Principal Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah were expected to depart the administration by the end of the year. And Sanders came on back and said, no, she is not leaving. And CBS could have called her rather than rely on people who are second or third removed. Donald Trump just tweeted out that America's biggest enemy is fake news, and he certainly is right about that. Kathy Griffin is out there making news again, and she is publicly chastising Kevin Hart, because on Kevin Hart's stand-up routines, he does not go after Donald Trump. He just does his comedy. He doesn't do like Kathy Griffin did or like Robert De Niro did. He just does his show, and he's very successful. His shows are sellout. But Kathy Griffin decided to basically come on and chastise him and saying, you know, you should do that, avoiding Donald Trump. That's a blank move because you're a black man. So it was racist, it was obscene, it was profane. And I don't know if Kathy Griffin is just really upset that not everybody is bashing Trump, or she's just trying to get her name in the newspapers one more time, because she's definitely a star on the wane, to put it delicately. But I'll tell you what's really going on. I think people are just getting sick and tired of being told they're about to watch a comedy presentation that turns out to be a whining screed about Donald Trump in particular and conservatism in general. And we're starting to see a major pushback against liberalism. And I think this is part of it. People want to go back to being entertained, not proselytized for whatever those tickets cost here. Trump is expected to slap China with tens of billions of dollars in tariffs as early as tomorrow, this according to the Wall Street Journal. And this may have been the reason why yesterday's stock market did not do well, and it didn't do all that great today. I think the Dow ended in the red, the others in the green just a bit. Actually, the NASDAQ did pretty good. Canadians are already starting to respond to the tariffs by boycotting U.S. products and canceling vacation plans to America. And apparently shoppers are shunning Kentucky bourbon, California wine, Florida oranges, and avoiding American companies like Starbucks, Walmart, and McDonald's. This was reported on Canadian network CTV. Over on Twitter, hashtags are surfacing like Buy Canadian, Boycott U.S. Products, Boycott USA. And one Ottawa man posted a Trump-free grocery cart full of products from Canada or from countries with strong leadership. And vacationers are saying this summer they're just going to find someplace interesting to go in Canada. So it's heating up. We're going to take a break now for station identification. We'll be back with hour number 3 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on into the news here, let me just finish this. Oh, by the way, for people who were wondering about Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, he is alive. He showed up today for the first game of the World Cup, which was between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Russia won it 5-0. So that's where we are on that. If he was wounded in that attempted coup, apparently he has now recovered. Getting on back to the economic news, Crimea and Syria have agreed on a trade partnership in order to circumvent trade sanctions. And basically, Bashar al-Assad has backed this agreement between Sevastopol and Tartus and described it as an important means of cooperation, saying that given the international blockade of trade with Syria, the Mediterranean Sea is the only way out to the global market. The agreement was celebrated by the authorities of Sevastopol as it aims to increase the exchange of goods between the two ports. So once again, the net result of all of Donald Trump's sanctions and tariffs is to further isolate the United States from the rest of the world. Now, over the last 12 months, the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar has dropped at the fastest rate since 2011. According to the latest data released by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the Consumer Price Index jumped by 2.8% year over year in May. That follows on the heels of a 2.5% leap year over year in April. In other words, prices are going up, which of course is not good news for people who buy stuff. We're going into an inflationary period, which is to be expected when you look at all that excess money created out of thin air and poured all over Wall Street to keep them propped up. When they're creating new money out of thin air, the value of the money in your pocket goes down. Now, there's an interesting little article from Lear Capital, what they don't tell you in the jobs report, because as you know, we have this jobs report that came on out that was the usual glowing thing about unemployment is 4%. And this article is saying that the economy is really in worse shape. You don't get to see it. And they point out in the Great Depression, you couldn't ignore the destitute. The lines for the soup kitchens and bread lines were right in front of you, stretching around the block. They were famously photographed as a symbol of our economic calamity. Now people who are on food assistance get benefit or EBT cards that they use at the grocery store, just like a credit card. Unless you're looking directly over their shoulder, you have no way of knowing they're part of the bread line, 21st century style. And yet, as of February of this year, 40 million Americans participate in SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or food stamps. That's almost 15,000 people for every Walmart supercenter in the country. That is a huge bread line. But by design, it is invisible. The other issue, of course, is the jobs the economy are adding are not as good as the jobs that have been lost. They pay less, they require fewer hours, the benefits are not as good if they even exist at all. They're not in the crucial area of manufacturing, they're not jobs that make things or create any enduring value. These are not jobs that anchor the economy, they're weaker jobs. And the economy may be weaker than what is being reported. Well, we've been telling you that for a very, very long time. Another article coming out of Blacklisted News here. What is supposed to be the purpose of the Medicaid program? It's to provide health care coverage to people who cannot access it on their own so they can lead healthier lives, supposedly. And if you ask the analysts at Americans for Prosperity, a right-wing group founded by billionaire Koch brothers, the answer is that Medicaid's role is to encourage people to find employment, so eventually they drain fewer resources from the government. Well, that sounds really good, and it's easy to sit there and say people should find a job, but the jobs are not out there. And part of the reason the jobs are not out there is because the economy has already been drained by the U.S. government to pay for the wars, endless wars all over the globe. If Bernie Sanders is to be trusted, the U.S. is engaged in military operations in 76 countries. Now, over at patriotrising.com, they have a little piece of advice, and it's saying that if you are an investor, if you have venture capital, risk capital, it's very dangerous to invest based on government statistics because they are phony. And you're trying to plan your financial future on the basis of an illusion. And they're absolutely right about that. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And interesting observation from Investment Watch blog. They're pointing out how the Federal Reserve is increasing the pace of interest rate hikes just in time for the 2018 midterm elections. And they point out, if the Federal Reserve wants to hurt the U.S. economy, the quickest way they do that is by raising interest rates. And lower interest rates make it less expensive to borrow money, and economic activity tends to expand in a low interest rate environment. Alternatively, higher interest rates make it more expensive to borrow money, and economic activity tends to slow down. Since 1913, the Federal Reserve has engaged in 18 previous height-raking cycles, and every single one of them resulted in a huge stock market decline or a recession. It will be the same this time around. And they know exactly what they're doing at the Federal Reserve. Interest rates are being jacked up just in time for the 2018 midterm elections, and that is bad news for the Republican Party and the Trump administration, because the corporate media is going to blame the economic slowdown on Donald Trump's economic policies, when it's actually the Federal Reserve playing politics, weaponizing the money. Russia and Belarus have ditched the U.S. dollar in favor of their own national currencies. The de-dollarization of the world is continuing apace. And frankly, if the world wants to avoid a global war, to force them back onto the U.S. dollar, then they should all drop the U.S. dollar right now at the same time and just get it over with. Meanwhile, pardon me, over at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the heads of the member states met to consider the implementation of the results of the 2017 Astana Summit and priorities for further SEO development in the context of current processes in world politics and economy. The important part here is these people are getting together focused on cooperation and working things out, rather than this body slamming of any country to do what the U.S. wants it to do. That really is the better way to go here. Story coming on out of Zero Hedge, I would recommend you panic. The peso is being pounded, the lira lashed, and rand routed as the EM crashes. And basically they're saying that the European currencies took a major hit against the U.S. dollar index. Remember last year when Bitcoin was soaring and everybody was saying, oh, you got to get in, you got to get in, you got to get in. But apparently, according to University of Texas finance professor John Griffin, who's been studying this, the record growth in Bitcoin last year was actually a coordinated market manipulation. Now, Griffin has 10 years' experience in detecting financial fraud. He examined millions of transactions on cryptocurrency exchange Bitfinex. And in his paper, Griffin says that the U.S. dollar-pegged cryptocurrency Tether was used to buy Bitcoin at the times that the latter was falling, which helped stabilize and manipulate the cryptocurrency's price. Fraud and manipulation leave footprints in the data, and it's nice to have the blockchain to track things. So Bitcoin, on top of all that, there's the cost of the so-called Bitcoin mining. And it's estimated that by the end of this year, Bitcoin mining will use 0.5% of the world's electrical energy production. Following the lead by McDonald's, Shake Shack is launching order kiosks to eliminate minimum wage workers. And they're saying that this is all in response to the workers who fight for 15. And so Shake Shack has become the latest fast food purveyor to launch order kiosks, which will help it minimize its largest profit and loss headwind, which is people. And the kiosks are cashless. You have to use your plastic card. And basically, there's another way to look at that. Okay, they're making you do the work of placing the order instead of going up to a human and saying, I want this, that, and whatever. They're making you tap it into the computer. I refuse to use those because, frankly, if I wanted to work at a fast food restaurant, I would be at a fast food restaurant. And two, I am still convinced that this rush to automation is going to accelerate the collapse of the consumer economy by putting more and more people out of work. So I just won't use them. I will not use them. Up in Seattle, remember the firestorm of controversy that was started a few weeks ago when they voted to approve a head tax on employees of large corporations in order to have funds to try and deal with Seattle's homeless situation. And the big companies in Seattle like Starbucks and Amazon started saying, well, we're just going to leave. We're going to leave for greener pastures, thereby displaying their humanity for their fellow man. But apparently the threats worked because now the Seattle Council has just repealed that new business head tax just weeks after they approved it. Over in Hungary, Viktor Orban is out there saying that Central Europe is in a period of great creation. We stand on the verge of a true Central European Renaissance. And I think what he is describing is that they want to regain their European identity from this mishmash that has been created by the open borders people. And it looks like apparently Slovakia is going to be helping Hungary with border protection, along with Bratislava. And they're starting to merge gas pipelines and electric grids as well. Over in Austria, the police and army are staging war games at the border to deter the next horde of an estimated 80,000 migrants. This is spreading all across Europe. They want no more of these migrants, no more of this open border situation. And of course, Soros and his open border people are out there saying, you're being racist, you're being racist. No, we're not being racist. Illegal is not a race. But UKIP's leader, Gerard, is out there saying, this is not immigration, this is invasion. And it's bringing us to the edge of a potential rebellion. And he's absolutely right, because immigration has controls. Immigration has requirements. Immigration has limits. Europe is being outright invaded. U.S. sanctuary cities and states are being outright invaded. The hordes just pour over the border without any restriction or control. That is an invasion. Story coming out of the Voice of Europe. One of Sweden's political leaders is out there saying, what you read about Sweden in alternative media is true. We are in a low-intensive civil war. We are facing problems more severe than ever before in our history, where Swedes face a situation of becoming a minority within 20 years if nothing is done to stop the replacement of our people. That's what that's what is happening all across Europe. They're just pouring all of these refugees in. So the indigenous Europeans become minorities in their own country. Apparently, Poland is getting ready to have a referendum, which, among other things, will include whether they continue as a member of the European Union, reestablishment of their Christian heritage, and basically they want their constitution revised to support the traditional family values and their 1,000-year-old Christian heritage. So this is really catching on. Everybody has had it with this whole situation. Over in Belgium, the editor-in-chief of the Belgian edition of the women's magazine Marie Claire, Anouk van Gestel, and another Belgian journalist are on trial accused of aiding migrants to get them into the UK. Okay, now, meanwhile, the United Nations, which, as you know, is fully on board with the globalists, is out there demanding Brussels ignore all resistance to mass migration and just start sharing the arrivals across the block. Just spread them out even. Nobody will notice they're there. Of course they will. Crime is going up. Rape is going up. Grooming gangs all over the place. Now, the United Nations has condemned Italy's decision to close its ports to a boat of 629 migrants. The boat is now apparently on its way to Spain. But yes, as a matter of fact, Italy does have a point. If you let the boat in with 600 migrants today, tomorrow there's going to be another boat with 600 migrants, and tomorrow another boat, and after that another boat, and after that another boat. So we're really seeing the emergence, we're getting close to an outright open conflict between the globalists and the nationalists. And they're just driving as hard as they can. And the pushback is showing up. Getting on back to Sweden, the Sweden Democratic Party is surging in polls, and they are anti-migration Eurosceptic. The EU experiment may be coming to a major implosion. Soros himself is worried. He said in that interview earlier in the week, anything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. So, apparently, pro-EU Tory ministers are at least accused of having met with a Soros-funded anti-Brexit group. And again, it's just underscoring the fact that there are those within the British government who wish to ignore the will of the British voters, and they're trying to find some way to get Great Britain back into the EU. And these three government ministers have met with the group Best for Britain, which is taking foreign money to try and overturn Brexit. Now, Hungary is blasting EU Brexit negotiator Guy Verhofstadt as a reliable Soros ally. And they're definitely, that's definitely true. Soros is pulling the strings behind a lot of this. Apparently, there has been a leak of emails from within Soros' organization released by DC Leaks showing the machinations, manipulations, and long reach of Soros. And apparently it's come on out that Soros' network across the EU is quite large. In fact, Soros' friends, and many of them are financially supported by Soros, have more than 1/3 of all the seats in the European Union Parliament. Soros is trying to buy himself a one-world government. And the people of the world are getting tired of it because we have to live with the real-world results. And just give me 2 seconds here. I got to get ready for something. Very, very, very busy. All right, there we are. Oh, and I got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Here in the United States, we're talking about immigration issues here. Apparently, according to this story, Paul Ryan and rhinos in Congress are preparing to vote on amnesty for over 6 million illegals in order to flip several states permanently blue. There's only one problem with that. Just because they have amnesty does not make them U.S. citizens and does not allow them to vote. And I'll tell you right now, if Donald Trump is seriously thinking about running again in 2020, we need a national voter ID law right now. Because we can't allow refugees or immigrants to come on in and vote themselves our country. Just think about that story that we just did about Sweden, where they're saying the Swedes will be a minority in their own country in just 20 years. Over in Germany, their foreign minister Maas is out there saying that a Europe united can counter America first. And once again, we're seeing the indications that what this is really all about are the globalists against the nationalists. And this Maas is obviously with the globalists, a one world government. We're going to just push it all together. And I've come to realize that even though Donald Trump is giving the deep state pretty much everything they want in terms of the wars and so forth, the reason they are still trying to get rid of him is he is a big roadblock on their efforts to create the one world government. And I think that's the reason they're still trying to find some way to get rid of him, with the hoax about Russia collusion and the rest of it. And I'm opposed to globalism, and I've explained that many times before. For a wide variety of reasons. First of all, as we have seen in our own time, the larger a government gets, the more oppressive a government gets. A single government governing the entire planet would be the most oppressive tyranny in all of history. The second reason I'm opposed to globalism is because there are no alternatives. There's no more social evolution. It'll just stop there, and that will be it. That will be the height of human civilization until the sun swallows this planet. I think humanity is best served by a planet with 1,000 little tiny nations all over it, none of them large enough to be a threat to any of the others, all of them self-sufficient, trading across borders, tourism across borders, and taking care of their own business, each with their unique cultural identity. I think that's what serves human civilization first. But throughout history, every once in a while you get somebody who says, I want to rule the entire world. Like, well, for example, Alexander the Great, who got awfully darn close except he didn't know what was out there further to the east. Over in Britain, there is this entrepreneur, Kazi Shafarak Rahman. He came to Britain from Bangladesh in 1997. He's become quite wealthy, importing perfumes, and he's launching his own airline that will be Sharia compliant. And he's describing himself as the halal Richard Branson. And his airline will serve no alcohol. It will have Islamic in-flight meals and a strict cabin crew dress code. Now, it may work when you consider how many Muslims have been brought to Great Britain and Europe by George Soros. But it's another reason to understand that this open borders thing is distorting our culture, our society, our economy. We're losing ourselves in this. And I think that is definitely the intention here. A little while ago, we reported on the story of this FBI agent, Chase Bishop, was DC-based special agent, was visiting Denver for training earlier this month, and he was at the Mile High Spirits in the city's Lodo area. And he was out there breakdancing, he did a backflip, and his gun fell out, and when he picked his gun up, it discharged, and it wounded a man. And he has now been charged with assault in the second degree, which is a class 4 felony. And they're still waiting for the results on the blood alcohol report. And if he was under intoxication of some kind, he may get additional charges against him. But I guess the B in FBI stands for black eye. Now, as you know, there have been a lot of rallies for Tommy Robinson. And a great deal of concern expressed for his well-being now that he's been moved to a maximum security prison with a 71% Muslim population. Basically, he was jailed for contempt of court for breaching court reporting laws by live streaming a trial of a grooming gang, who were, by the way, found guilty. But in order to discredit Tommy Robinson's supporters, somebody took a photo of the Liverpool Football Club's homecoming parade in 2005 and posted that as the Tommy Robinson rally in London. A little bit of a dirty trick there. We'll be right back after these commercials. Story where apparently Trey Gowdy was rather surprised to find out that Inspector General Horowitz, in compiling this 500-page report, requested an interview with Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton declined. So this, I think, underscores a point I made earlier in the show. The sum total of this IG report is that the investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server was handled improperly, so let's reset and have a proper investigation into the email server. It's overdue. It's overdue. Let's get Larry Klayman up here to do it. So, oh boy, it seems like the LGBTQ people continue to be confrontational. They've gone beyond simply saying you must accept us, and we said, well, we accept you here. Now they're being confrontational. They want to basically push into your space and say, you have to deal with us as we are. And as you know, there was that situation with the baker who was dragged through the courts for something like 6 years for refusing to bake a cake for a gay couple, when the reasonable thing to do would have been for that couple to simply go to a baker who wouldn't have those kind of scruples. Well, apparently there's been another situation where there's a company called Brush and Nib, and it's owned by Joanna Duca and Brianna Koski. It's a calligraphy printing shop, and they were asked to produce wedding invitations for a gay couple, and they said, no, we prefer not to because of our Christian faith. And again, the reasonable thing to do would have been for the couple involved to simply find another printing shop. But they didn't do that. They took brush and nib to court, and apparently the judge has said that for every day the brush and nib refuse to make the invitations, they'll be fined $2,500 and subject to 6 months in jail. Additionally, the business owners cannot explain to potential customers or to the public why they were choosing not to create the invitations for a wedding that violates their religious beliefs. And once again, we're seeing these liberals who claim to be just worried about the rights of certain people trampling on the rights of everybody else. They don't want equal rights for all. They want special treatment for themselves. Over in Indiana, there's an orchestra teacher who's been forced to resign because he refused to pretend boys could be girls. And John Kluge basically tried to get around the situation where the policy was that students had to be called by their chosen names and pronouns in the school records. In other words, the teachers have to look on down to a little registry to decide how to address the person, which is a lot of added work on the teacher. And Kluge instead called his students simply by their last names to get around that. But that wasn't good enough. Students were accusing Kluge of implying that transgender persons are not an actual human being and actively disrespectful for not using their opposite sex pronouns to describe them. And apparently, they have a lot of kids at this school who are now claiming to be transgender. Now, either they're simply following the fashion to be transgender, or there is some seriously endocrine disrupting chemicals in the local environment. But again, this is just getting ridiculous. I don't see anything wrong with the orchestra teacher addressing the students by the last name. I had teachers who did that when I was in school, and it was no big deal. Over in Great Britain, there was a case where a social worker removed an 8-year-old boy from his family and put the boy in foster care, claiming the mother wasn't taking good care of him because she wouldn't take him for an ice cream or let him get his hair cut the way he wanted to have it done, and therefore was not fulfilling the son's emotional needs, and actually got a family court judge to go along with this. Fortunately, the parents went to the high court, and the high court said this is ridiculous, and he restored the boy to his true parents, and he castigated the social worker, saying this is ridiculous. It's utterly insubstantial and obviously inconsequential as reasons for the child to be separated from the mother. Levy Tillerman, who's the grandson of the late Congressman Tom Lantos, who also wants to impeach Trump for aiding white supremacists in treason, is out there saying it's time to address toxic masculinity. And he's hopping onto this idea that most mass shooters are men. We have to end the toxic culture of violence, which ties masculinity to warfare and guns. Well, good start would be to end all the wars there, Levy. He's also calling for no guns or ammo for anyone on the no-fly list, ignoring the fact that most of the people on the no-fly list really ought not to be there. They haven't committed any crimes. They're just put on the list because somebody in TSA didn't like them. All right, let's take a phone call here. Rhonda in Missouri. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. You were talking about the couple that was trying to get somebody to do the invitations.
Yes.
And I think it's to annoy people that don't agree with the lifestyle. However, what would keep, I would try and beat them at their own game and just say, okay, and then send out the invitations to somebody that will do them, just transfer it over and not make any money on it.
Well, that might be one way to do it, but when I was younger, all businesses had the right to refuse service to anybody arbitrarily. In fact, usually in businesses, you'd see that framed on the wall. We reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. You can still see it today here, but the LGBTQ community is apparently no longer satisfied with us accepting them as they go about their lives. Now they're trying to intrude into places like the bakery and like the calligraphy shop, and just demand you do for us what we want you to do, even though your religion is against it. And that's going to backflash on them, because instead of us all getting along together peacefully, it's getting confrontational, it's getting combative, and that will backflash on them.
Rather than get tied up in the court system and give the legal system more money than they should be getting, they could just say, fine, and then have somebody else do it, knowing that they didn't do it, not making a dime on it, and then just say, come back in a week or something and pick up your invitations. And they didn't have a hand in it. They didn't make any money. But, it's kind of overt, but in the same way,
yeah, but at the same time, how did they know they were going to get sued? It's their business, their place of business. They have their religious beliefs, and they have a right to refuse service. They had no idea there was going to be a lawsuit on the other side of it.
Well,
that's the whole new thing.
Because the people of the cake.
Well, the baker finally won his case. The Supreme Court came on down and said that his rights and freedom of religion had to be respected as well.
Yeah, I guess so. But in the same way, if you don't want the hassle, you could just, I see your point. I totally would just say, I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Here's the problem. These LGBTQ couples, they're creating the hassle. They're going on out. They're targeting these shops to go on in and make a big stink so they can play the victim. Oh, I'm being discriminated against. They won't make my cake. They won't make my invitations. Playing the victim card again. And it's really not going to work, because the real victims here are that baker who lost his business in 6 years of legal proceedings, and these calligraphers who are just trying to live their lives and do their business. They're the real victims here.
Right. Okay. Well, I just thought if somebody didn't want to get tied up in that, but you just had a point. You said calligraphers, so maybe there's no other calligrapher invitation people around so that they could have farmed it out too. Either way, I don't know, but yeah, that's a good point. All right, thank you for taking my call.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And again, we're seeing that liberal double standard situation because these are the same people who are saying it's okay for Facebook and Google and YouTube and Twitter to not carry conservative traffic because it goes against the beliefs of the owners of social media. Then they turn around and say, you will bake that cake or you will print those invitations because, by golly, we have rights and you don't. Now, a little while ago, I think we were talking about this story, and there's a postscript to it. Gentleman named Lawrence McKinney spent 31 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. And he was cleared of the charges in 2008 after DNA evidence was tested. This came out of the Innocence Project, which is a group that tries to help people who genuinely have been wrongfully imprisoned by our broken justice system. Despite the charges being dropped in 2008, it took another year for the government to agree to release him. And they basically sent him on out into a world he didn't know, but they didn't let him leave empty-handed. They gave him $75. That was it. They took him, they wrongfully imprisoned him, they kept him in prison for the most productive years of his life. They let him on out, gave him $75. Fortunately, a lot of people had come to his aid, and they got together enough money to bring a lawsuit, and it was an uphill battle, but eventually A decade after he was cleared, McKinney received the maximum amount allowed by the state of Tennessee, which is $1 million. Now, CNN said he finally got justice. Well, not really when you look at it, because $1 million might sound like a lot of money, but it works out to just over $32,000 per year he spent in prison. If you look at the time between his conviction and his final justice, the $1 million award, it comes out to $25,000 per year. And all those prosecutors and judge who mistakenly threw this guy in prison, what happens to them? Well, I imagine by now they're all retired. What can I tell you? As I mentioned before, the World Cup has started. The first game has been played. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was seen in the stands. Russia won it 5-0. And again, we're seeing this propaganda against the World Cup. It's a replay of what they did at the Olympics at Sochi. Now, Robbie Williams is out there saying that his chance to go to the World Cup is a boyhood dream, and he's invited football and music fans to party with us in Russia for an unforgettable show. But to the most seasoned Russian haters in Great Britain, they're out there saying that Robbie Williams is selling his soul to Putin. He's selling his soul. It's a bet. They just will not let it go. They will not let it go. And I don't think they understand how incredibly petty they are looking to the rest of the world. You can almost feel the rest of the world just taking a huge sigh at all the Russia bashing and saying, it's really gone on way too long. It's past its X date. It needs to go in the trash masher here. As you know, yesterday a judge ruled that the AT&T Time Warner merger can move forward, and a lot of people are saying that this is going to be a disaster, especially combined with the repeal of net neutrality. And according to Jeff Cohen at Roots Action Org and FAIR, this is not anti-competitive. It's creating a monopoly. And every time there is a monopoly, prices go up, quality of service goes down. That's why there used to be laws against monopolies in this country to protect the consumer from corporate abuses and high prices. But those days are long gone. Comcast is saying it's ending its practice of slowing traffic for heavy internet users for now, but reserves the right to do it again. Feels to me like little more than a PR stunt here. Now, as you know, Bill Clinton is out there making a tour for his book. It's a work of fiction that he co-authored with somebody, Patterson, who's actually a very prolific writer. And of course, he's being asked a lot of embarrassing questions at all of these book stops because he's no longer the president. He's just another guy. Interestingly enough, even as Bill Clinton is out there trying to get his book sold, PJ Media is reporting that the Kindle version of Juanita Broaddrick's book, You Better Put Some Ice on That, How I Survived Being Raped by Bill Clinton, has been removed from the online retail giant Amazon. Now, it's been up there for years, and it's been selling just fine, but Amazon is now saying there appears to be some kind of a formatting error that forced them to take it down. I mean, the book has been selling, I'm sorry, not years, 5 months of problem-free sales, and Juanita Broaddrick used the Amazon-supplied formatter for the book, but for some reason Amazon has decided to take it down. And that's another problem with monopolies, especially media monopolies, but apparently now just with shopping monopolies. They start controlling what you see, hear, and read. We don't want you to know that Bill Clinton really did rape this woman. Over at YouTube, they've had a bit of a major goof. As you know, there are a lot of videos on YouTube that are aimed at children. And that's a good thing. There's a lot of good videos out there. Unfortunately, some of them are being shown with trailers for adult horror movies that are just traumatizing the kids. Apparently, YouTube does not have a mechanism for making sure that ads shown on videos are age appropriate. And that is a major, major oversight. We'll be back after these few words with the last segment of today's show. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, last segment of our program today here. And it's time for the update on our Hawaii volcano. But first, a little bit of history. One of the ways that Hawaii's volcanoes are different from volcanoes that you would see along, for example, the west coast of the United States, those are all subduction zone volcanoes. Where one tectonic plate is sliding underneath the other. And as a result of the heat and pressure, those volcanoes will produce diamonds. Now, here in Hawaii, we have what is called a mantle plume or a hot spot powering our volcanoes, but without the pressures of a subduction zone, Hawaii's volcanoes do not produce diamonds. The reason we have the geographic feature Diamond Head near Waikiki Beach goes back to some very intoxicated British sailors who found some calcite crystals and assumed they had to be diamonds because, of course, everybody knows that you find diamonds in volcanoes. Okay, that's the backstory. There may not be diamonds, but there are other gemstones. And people are starting to go back in to the areas where the eruption's been happening, and they're finding these little tiny green gemstones all over the place. Now, the green gems are olivine crystals. This is a very common mineral found in Hawaii's lava. In jewelry quality, the mineral is called peridot. And as the volcano erupts, it blasts apart the molten lava, which allows the green olivine minerals to be separated from the rest of the melt and fall as tiny gemstones. So a lot of people are down there picking those up. A little bit of a souvenir. But again, you have to be careful. A lot of that stuff, it is basically glass, no matter what it looks like with the black. It's vitrified material. It's glass. It can cut you, and especially the very tiny particles and the Pele's hair can be very detrimental to your eyes. All right, let's see. We're going to take one more phone call. Mateus in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I consider my volcano education to be increased just now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear you got so many problems. I'm sorry to hear you have so many problems erupting all over the place there still. But hey, I wanted to make fun of Sweden, complain about violence on TV, and tell a gardening joke. So, starting with Sweden, you mentioned yesterday that it's outlawed to report the ethnicity of a rapist.
Yes.
In Sweden, remember that?
Yep.
Well, aren't feminists supposed to be against giving aid and comfort to rapists? Forgive me, it's totally insane.
Well, remember, liberalism doesn't have to make sense. It just has to sound good on the 6 o'clock news.
True, but that doesn't even sound good. That on its face is a contradiction. 90-degree change in direction, or I should say 180-degree. Anyway, I'll just go to the gardening joke because you'd probably have a lot to say about the next one. So I was doing mulching and installing grass on the weekend, so I came up with a gardening joke. What does Spanish grass say to the show appreciation for being mulched?
I have no idea, and it better be quick because we're out of time.
Mulchas gracias.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's going to have lots and lots of useful things or important things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and at whatreallyhappened.com, share it with everybody that you know, and use email, use private conversation. So the big social media companies, they're totally compromised. They're totally filtered. They're trying to find a way to silence us without it becoming a First Amendment issue. Please support RBN. Please support whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.